It was past midnight when Emily Parker's phone buzzed, the glow cutting through her half-dream haze. She blinked, heart thudding as the words formed on her screen. "Do you know who he really is?" Fear tangled with confusion. She whispered Daniel's name, but he stirred only faintly beside her, his breathing steady and indifferent. The message request sat there like poison wrapped in curiosity, and Emily felt her throat tighten. She wanted to delete it, to pretend it had never arrived, yet her trembling finger hovered instead. The room seemed colder, shadows heavy, and in that silence she realized nothing would ever be the same. Morning light crept through the curtains, yet Emily could not shake the chill of the message. She watched Daniel pour coffee, his smile too smooth, his voice too even. Emily asked, "Who would send something like that?" Daniel chuckled, brushing it off, but his eyes darted away too quickly. He said, "Probably spam, don't waste your thoughts on it." The words felt polished, rehearsed. Emily forced a laugh, but inside the unease grew like a shadow stretching across her chest. Later that day, Emily met Sarah Miller at their favorite cafe, steam curling from untouched cups. Emily whispered about the message, her voice cracking. Sarah leaned forward, brows knitting, her concern genuine yet heavy with caution. She said, "That doesn't sound random." Emily shook her head, insisting Daniel would never lie. Sarah's silence spoke louder than her words, and Emily felt the tremor of doubt creep further into her bones. That evening, Emily lingered at the doorway, watching Daniel at his desk. He typed swiftly, phone buzzing once before he flipped it face down. She asked softly, "Who's texting you so late?" Daniel's jaw tightened as he muttered, "Work." The air was heavy, silence louder than his answer. Emily turned away, her chest tightening as suspicion gnawed, the message replaying endlessly in her mind. That night, as Emily slipped under the covers, Daniel pulled her close, his tone honeyed yet sharp beneath. He whispered, "Don't let strangers mess with your head. You trust me, right?" Emily nodded, though her chest ached. His embrace felt more like chains than comfort. She shut her eyes, but the message blazed behind her lids. The doubt had been planted, and it was already taking root. Emily walked through the park that morning, sunlight breaking through autumn leaves, but the message still gnawed at her. She remembered how much she trusted Daniel when they first met. Every smile, every promise. She whispered to herself, "He built my world." Yet, she wondered if that world was only glass waiting to shatter. Children laughed nearby, their carefree joy cutting into her heavy silence. She sat on a bench, staring at her ring, questioning if love was strength or weakness. At home, Sarah visited with gentle persistence, sensing Emily's unease. Emily confessed about her fears, voice quivering. Sarah said, "Love can blind us, but truth has sharp edges." Emily shook her head, insisting Daniel was her anchor. Sarah leaned closer, whispering, "Then ask yourself why that message cut so deep." Emily's breath caught, the words stinging, but she held back tears. That night, Emily found a crumpled receipt in Daniel's jacket, dated from a restaurant she had never visited. Her pulse quickened as she smoothed the paper, the ink smearing under her thumb. Daniel entered suddenly, his voice too casual. "Looking for something?" Emily stammered, shoving the receipt back. He smiled faintly, yet his eyes hardened. The air grew sharp, like glass ready to crack. Later, Daniel leaned close on the sofa, voice dripping with charm. He brushed her hair back, saying, "You worry too much, Emily." She forced a laugh, but her chest tightened. His hand lingered on hers, too heavy, too deliberate. She thought of the message, the receipt, the lies that might hide in his smile. Yet she nodded anyway, trapped between hope and fear, her heart pounding. That night, Emily sat alone at the edge of their bed, shadows swallowing the room. Daniel was in the shower, humming faintly. She whispered, "I trust him, I have to." Yet the memory of Sarah's warning burned. Emily curled her fists, nails biting into her palms. Her love felt like chains, heavy and unbreakable. She closed her eyes, pretending she was safe, though she knew the doubt had already taken root too deep. Emily's phone buzzed again late at night. Another message from Liam Carter. This time it read, "He's not who you think he is." Her breath caught as she deleted it quickly, afraid Daniel might wait. Her hands trembled as she locked the screen, but the words burned inside her skull. The silence of the room only magnified her racing heartbeat. She whispered into the darkness, "Why me? Why now?" and felt the ground beneath her trust begin to crumble further. The next day, Emily slipped into Daniel's office while he showered. She opened his drawer and found papers, bank slips she had never seen. Her pulse thundered as she shoved them back, hands shaking. The bathroom door creaked, and she rushed to stand near the desk, feigning calm. Daniel walked out, towel slung carelessly, saying, "Couldn't wait for me." His smile was thin, his eyes sharp. Emily forced a laugh, but the weight of suspicion clawed deeper. That evening Emily asked about the receipts and accounts, her voice trembling. Daniel leaned back in his chair, chuckling low, and said, "You're imagining things, Emily." He reached for her hand, but his grip felt like iron. He added, "You always worry too much." Her stomach twisted as he dismissed her, twisting her fear into weakness. She whispered, "I just want the truth." His smile faltered, but only for a heartbeat, before the mask slid back in place. Emily met Sarah again, her voice breaking as she described Daniel's denials. Sarah frowned, leaning closer, saying, "Gaslighting makes you doubt your own mind. That's what he's doing." Emily wiped tears away, insisting she might be overreacting. Sarah shook her head, saying softly, "Your instincts aren't wrong, Em." The cafe's warm chatter felt distant, drowned by Emily's spiraling fear. That night, the argument erupted. Emily accused Daniel of hiding something, her voice rising. Daniel slammed his hand on the table, shouting, "You're paranoid!" The walls seemed to tremble with the weight of their fury. Emily's tears streaked down her cheeks as she cried, "Then prove me wrong." Daniel's silence roared louder than any words, his glare cutting deep. The house fell into suffocating quiet, but the war had already begun. Emily's heart pounded as she agreed to meet Liam Carter at a quiet cafe. She scanned the room nervously until her eyes caught his, steady, piercing, unflinching. He said softly, "You deserve the truth." Emily's hands clenched around her coffee cup as fear crawled up her spine. Liam slid a folder across the table, his gaze locked on her trembling face. "Daniel isn't who he says he is," he whispered. The cafe noise dulled, as if the world had fallen silent around them. Emily opened the folder slowly, her breath shallow. Inside were photos of Daniel with another woman, his arm around her shoulders, his smile the same one Emily thought belonged only to her. Her throat burned as she whispered, "No." Liam's voice was steady. "He's been living two lives." The truth carved into her chest, leaving her both shattered and furious. She shoved the folder closed, but the images were already burned into her mind. Later that evening, Emily confronted Daniel, slamming the folder onto the dining table. "Who is she?" she demanded, her voice sharp. Daniel froze, his jaw locking as his eyes flicked toward the photos. He forced a laugh, but his hands trembled as he reached for the papers. "This is nothing," he muttered. Emily stepped back, shaking her head, her voice cracking. "Don't you dare lie to me again." The walls seemed to close in with every second of silence. Daniel's mask slipped for the first time. His smile vanished, replaced by a cold sneer. "You think you know me?" he hissed, slamming the folder shut. Emily's breath hitched as he stepped closer, his shadow swallowing her. She whispered, "Why would you do this?" His voice rose, defensive and sharp, "Because you wouldn't understand." His fury cracked through the fragile walls of their life, and Emily realized he was no longer even pretending to be the man she loved. That night, Emily called Sarah, her voice cracking as she explained everything. Sarah gasped, anger flashing through her tone. "I told you, Em, your instincts were right." Emily sobbed, "I don't even know who I've been living with." Sarah's silence carried both sorrow and rage. Finally, she whispered, "This is only the beginning." Emily clutched the phone, heart hammering, as she realized the betrayal was deeper than she had ever imagined. Emily stood rigid in the living room, folder pressed against her chest, her pulse pounding so loudly it drowned the silence. Daniel entered casually at first, jacket slung over his shoulder, but his eyes froze the moment they landed on the photographs scattered across the table. His expression flickered, shock, then annoyance, then a coldness she had never seen. Emily's voice cracked as she shouted, "You lied to me." Her words shattered the stillness. Daniel dropped his jacket, mask slipping, muttering, "You have no idea what you've uncovered." Emily stepped forward, trembling but fierce, whispering, "Then show me who you really are." The argument erupted like fire to gasoline. Emily hurled the folder onto the table, papers fanning out across the surface. She screamed, "I gave you everything, Daniel, my trust, my life." Daniel's fist slammed the wall, rattling the frames. He snarled, "And it still wasn't enough?" Emily's sob cut through the air, raw and jagged. "Then what is enough?" she demanded, voice breaking. His chest heaved, eyes wild, charm stripped away, leaving only desperation. The house itself seemed to groan under the weight of their fury. Daniel's rage broke into collapse as he dropped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "I didn't want it to come to this," he muttered, words muffled but heavy. Emily's chest rose and fell sharply, her voice trembling but sharp as glass. "What else are you hiding?" Silence stretched, and Daniel's hands shook where they gripped his temples. When he finally looked up, his eyes were shadowed with defeat. "More lies than you'll ever forgive," he whispered. Emily staggered back, her knees weak, as though the room itself tilted beneath her feet. The doorbell shattered the suffocating silence. Emily's legs felt like stone as she moved toward the door, Daniel's eyes snapping wide in sudden panic. She pulled it open, and the world collapsed further. A woman stood there, rain dripping from her hair, fury etched into her features. A small child clinging to her hip. "So this is where he's been hiding," she spat. Emily froze, voice barely a whisper. "Who are you?" The woman's glare cut like knives. "I'm Anna," she said bitterly. "And this is his daughter." Daniel's face blanched, color draining as truth roared into the house. Chaos erupted, as if the house itself cracked open. Anna stormed inside, her voice trembling with rage. "You lied to me too, Daniel. You built 2 lives and ruined us both." Emily staggered back, knees threatening to buckle, whispering, "His daughter?" The little girl's innocent eyes cut deeper than any blade. Daniel raised his hands, frantic. "I was protecting you both. I never wanted this to happen." Emily's scream tore through the room. "You destroyed everything." Anna clutched her child closer, her glare burning with righteous fury. The living room became a battlefield, not of fists, but of shattered trust. Emily sat motionless in the living room, surrounded by the scattered evidence of Daniel's lies. The folder lay half open, photos spilling onto the carpet like shards of broken promises. Her chest rose and fell unevenly as her eyes blurred with tears. Daniel's footsteps echoed as he paced behind her, muttering excuses that sounded like hollow echoes. He said, "You don't understand, I had no choice." Emily's voice was barely a whisper, trembling but sharp. "You chose this, Daniel. You chose lies over us." Her words carved through the silence, leaving only despair. Emily's hands shook as she reached for her phone, whispering Sarah's name as though it were her last lifeline. Minutes later, Sarah rushed in, her presence filling the room with both comfort and fire. She pulled Emily into her arms, whispering, "You're not alone. Not now. Not ever." Emily collapsed against her friend, sobbing, the weight of betrayal spilling through every tear. Daniel stood stiffly in the corner, his jaw clenched, eyes flashing with resentment. Sarah turned her head sharply, her voice cutting through the air. "If you loved her, you wouldn't have broken her like this." Silence consumed him. Later, Daniel's pride cracked. He sank to his knees before Emily, desperation twisting his face into something almost unrecognizable. His hands reached for hers, trembling, his voice breaking as he pleaded, "Please, Emily, I can fix this. I can make it right. Emily looked down at him, her tears drying into ice. She whispered, "You can't fix something you shattered on purpose." Daniel's breath caught, his eyes pleading, but she pulled her hand back slowly, as if releasing herself from invisible chains. In that moment, Daniel became a stranger, someone she could no longer recognize as the man she once loved. The door opened again, and Anna entered quietly, her child asleep against her shoulder. Her eyes still burned with rage, but her voice was firm. "You don't get to erase us anymore, Daniel." Emily's gaze shifted to the child, innocence resting against betrayal, and her breath hitched. Anna's expression softened as she looked at Emily and whispered, "You deserve the truth. She deserves it too." Daniel's shoulders sagged, his silence a confession louder than words. Emily spoke with quiet resolve, "We are all victims of your lies, Daniel. Every single one of us." The weight of her words filled the room like thunder. That night, the house was silent, except for the faint hum of the city outside. Emily stood at the window, moonlight painting her figure in pale silver. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman broken yet still standing. She whispered to herself, "This doesn't end me. This remakes me." Behind her, Daniel sat slumped on the sofa, his head buried in his hands, the weight of his downfall crushing him. Emily placed her hand against the cold glass, closing her eyes. The ache remained, but beneath it burned something fierce, the beginning of her rebirth. The house was no longer a home, but a hollow shell of memories and lies. Emily sat at the dining table, a torn photograph trembling between her fingers, its edges digging into her skin. The silence pressed like iron, every breath suffocating. Daniel stood across the room, his face pale, eyes sunken, lips parting but no words forming. She whispered, "You've taken everything from me." He lowered his gaze, his silence louder than confession. Emily let the photo fall, the torn halves drifting apart like their lives. The next morning, Sarah entered quietly, her footsteps cautious against the creaking floor. Emily sat slumped on the sofa, staring at the blank wall as if answers might appear there. Sarah crouched beside her, wrapping arms around her trembling friend. "It's over now," she whispered. Emily shook her head, her voice a rasp. "No, Sarah, it's only the beginning of who I have to become." Sarah's eyes glistened with sorrow as she nodded, recognizing that Emily's heart had been shattered, but not extinguished. Later that afternoon, Daniel packed in silence, the sound of the zipper ripping through the stillness. Emily stood in the doorway, arms folded across her chest, her face frozen in cold resolve. He muttered, "I never meant to hurt you." She replied softly, "But you did, Daniel, over and over again." His shoulders sagged as he lifted the small bag, the weight heavier than its contents. His footsteps echoed, each step peeling him away from the life he had ruined, until the door shut behind him like a coffin lid. Emily sank into the living room sofa as the door clicked shut, the house groaning with the weight of absence. She pressed her fists into her eyes, trying to erase the image of Anna and the child. Daniel's lies had chained them all, but now he was gone. Emily whispered into the empty room, "He belongs to them now, not me." The words cut her, but they freed her too. Tears slid down her cheeks as she realized she could rebuild, not for him but for herself, piece by fragile piece. That night, Emily stood before her mirror, her reflection pale, fragile, but unbroken. She whispered, "I never knew him at all." The silence replied, heavier than screams. She placed the torn photograph on the dresser, the halves never aligning. Her fingers lingered on the glass before switching off the light, plunging the room into darkness. The final blow was not Daniel's betrayal, but the truth staring back at her, that survival was hers alone. Her heart beat with quiet defiance, a rhythm of rebirth carved from ruin.